Mississippi River. Black leaves in the Mississippi fire. Black leaves in the Mississippi choir. Black leaves on the Mississippi land. And we've got cotton, we've got sons and daughters, we got grit and glory, we've got mama stories, we've got strength like towers, we got hope and power. God made woman with an iron's hand, placed her up on heaven's land. God made woman with an iron's hand, raised her up on heaven's land. With strength like towers, we got hope and power.
Copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowances made for fair use for purpose such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statutes that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips in the balance of the favor of fair use. Welcome to today's Black History Bite. We are in the month of Black History. It is my honor to talk about Venture Smith, the first enslaved person, and their narrative. Venture Smith. Venture Smith was born at Dukandara in Guinea about the year 1729. His father's name was Sanguine Furrow, prince of the tribe of Dukandara. That's the opening line of Venture Smith's, a narrative of the life and adventures of Venture, a native of Africa, but resident above 60 years in the United States of America, the earliest slave narrative in the United States published in 1798. Today we speak your name, Venture Smith, in remembrance of you. The Library of Congress has the original copy of the 32-page pamphlet preserved in the Rare Book and Special Collections Division, publishing by the Charles Hawk Company. It is still in print 223 years after publication, but you can read it online for free, and is the basis for the biographies of Smith and academic studies of the era. Smith's narrative is a rare account of slavery in colonial New England, one of only a few ever published. It's also one of the very few records of enslaved people who told of their lives in Africa. Among them, the handwritten autobiography of Omar ibn Said, also preserved at the library. Today, the city of East Haddam, Connecticut, near the farm where Smith settled for the last decades of his life, after buying his freedom, lists his gravesite as a tourist attraction and will celebrate the 25th annual Venture Smith Day, and it started September the 11th. In 2006, 2007, archaeologists excavated his long-lost homestead and published a fascinating pamphlet. The site is now part of the Silvia O. Conte National Fish and Wildlife Refuge, and it is not open to the public. The homestead wasn't quite in the place people thought it had been. It was completely grown over with only a few stone ruins. You would have never known that there had been 3 houses, a huge storage building, and a barn. Smith's story is a harrowing tale filled with kidnappings, fistfights, years of hard labor, and finally love and perseverance. Smith was 70 years old, bent with age and nearly blind at the time he told his story. But he owned more than 130 acres of land, a waterfront compound on the Salmon River that included 3 houses, a dry dock, blacksmith shop, and several warehouses. He was still married to his wife, Meg, whom he had worked 8 years to buy out of enslavement. 8 years of toil to get enough money to buy his wife out of slavery. It gives joy to think that I have, and this is an excerpt from his story, and that I deserve so good a character, especially for truth and integrity, he says near the end of his story. Emphasis in the original. The pamphlet was clearly intended as a rebuke to slavery, but the editor's preface contains passages that are startling to modern sensibilities. Smith grew up wholly destitute of all education but what he received in common with other domesticated animals. They write. Still, the editors note his intelligence, drive, and ambition. They tartly observe that perhaps some white people would not find themselves degraded by imitating such an example. Smith's story begins on the West African savannah, a couple of 100 miles inland. His real name was Brotier Pharaoh, and he was the son of a prince of Dukandara. Scholars have not been able to locate the place. It may have been a small kingdom that disappeared long ago. Though privileged, his early life was traumatic. His mother fled with the children after an argument with his father, running into the wilderness. Brotier was perhaps 4 years old, and as he recalled, she eventually left him with a kind farmer while she continued on with his siblings. He did not hear from his family again for more than a year until his father sent for him after reconciling with his mother. But shortly after his return, An army from a neighboring region rampaged through the village. His father was tortured to death in front of his family. The shocking scene is to this day fresh in his mind and has often been overcome while thinking on it. He dictated more than 6 decades later. Brotier, his mother, siblings, and hundreds of others were bound together and marched hundreds of miles to the coast. He does not say what became of his mother and siblings, but he was sold on the coast of modern-day Ghana, along with 260 others, to the owner of a Rhode Island slave ship. The ship's captain paid 4 gallons of rum and a piece of calico cloth for the child and told him his new name was going to be Venture. Decades later, he would take the surname of his last owner, Oliver Smith. The ship was likely the charming Susanna, which departed Newport in late 1738 and returned in September of 1739, according to the Connecticut Humanities, a nonprofit division of the National Endowment for the Humanities. The Middle Passage voyage was brutal. A quarter of the enslaved died of smallpox outbreak. Most of the survivors were sold in Barbados, but a handful were brought to Rhode Island. Smith, then about 6 years old, was bought by George Mumford, a commercial farmer. He was soon assigned to carting wood and grinding corn, often subjected to physical abuse. He grew into a tall, powerful man, often described as weighing more than 300 pounds, and so renowned for his feats of strength that he was later remembered as the Black Paul Bunyan. In his early 20s, he married Meg, an enslaved young woman who worked for the same owner. For the next decade, he labored for one owner or another, fishing, working on ships in the bay, or chopping hundreds of cords of firewood. He recounted several fights with his owners, trading punches and once being clubbed on the back of the head with a log. In April 1754, he and several others made a short-lived escape. Realizing they were going to be caught, he returned on his own, but not before his owner placed a runaway slave ad. It is the only known contemporary description of him, according to the Connecticut Humanities. He was a very tall fellow, 6 feet 2 inches high, thick, square shoulders, a large bond marked in the face, or scarred with a knife in his own country. The final chapter describes Smith's life after he bought his freedom at the age of 36. My freedom is a privilege which nothing else can equal, he wrote. He worked for 4 years to buy the freedom of his sons, Cuff and Solomon. and then another 4 years to buy Meg's freedom. They both then worked to buy the freedom of Hannah, their daughter. Historians note there is little in the record that shows what his life was like as a free man, and that his autobiography includes almost nothing about his wife and children save their names and when the two of them died. But it is clear that he was a well-established figure in the community. His farm and houses was not a typical enterprise by European settlers, but more akin to a West African family compound. His sons and their families lived in the two other houses on the property. His daughter died as a young adult, and they were almost entirely self-sufficient. He sailed on Connecticut and Salmon rivers, hauling cargo, trading goods, and repairing boats. He farmed and sold lumber that he cut. He bought the freedom for at least 3 other enslaved men, perhaps the best measure of how well he was regarded. The existence of his autobiography and that he was buried in a prominent place in the local church cemetery, even though he was not a member of the congregation. But it was never an easy life. He never learned to read and write very well and was often conned by whites who could. A wealthy businessman once falsely accused him of losing a barrel of molasses in shipment, sued him for it, and then insultingly taunted him about it. But Captain Hart was a white gentleman and I a poor African, and therefore it was all right and good enough for the black dog, he wrote. That's the voice that still commands attention centuries later. A proud, defiant man forging his way on a vast, often cruel continent. Ashe, and we speak your name, Venture Smith. And that's all, and that's it for today's episode. I hope you learned something today. As our own civil liberties are being changed in this year of 2025. When I read that story and to see that this man had created a compound right on the river in Connecticut, 130 acres of land. This man who was illiterate, but the compound that he built was for his family and their family, and so on and so forth. This man took care of his family and bought their freedom. It makes me think of what an insight it's going to see in this near future of what we're going to experience in this country. I'm not saying we're going that far back, but what I'm saying is that the way things are going, we are definitely going back. We're definitely going back. I wholeheartedly believe that. I hope I'm wrong. but the handwriting is on the wall. Today, a couple of things were brought to my attention. The first was that after many, many, many years, all of a sudden, the United States flag on federal agencies was changed from the flag that we all know as 50 stars and stripes has been replaced with a 9-star flag. Of course, propagandists got ahead of the story and stated that the flag was just a temporary mock-up and that we're all being super sensitive. And it is not a Confederate flag. That is not true. They buried it pretty damn good, but it's not true. May I offer? Hold on one moment. This is, and I zoomed in, I went into the Department of Veteran Affairs. And then I zoomed all the way in. And that's the official website seal. If you noticed, the flag that you notice here has 9 stars and 11 stripes. Allow me to share something else. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the flag in question that they said did not exist. This flag was considered a battle flag for the Confederacy. The 9 stars depict the 9 states that had conceded at that time. You will hear different stories about that. We're paranoid. It was a mistake. They didn't have enough room to put all 50 stars and the rest of the stripes. So that's what they came up with, because the thumbnail was so small. Now, I'm a novice, and even I know how to reduce an image down to that size. And it's amazing to me, the reason why I'm bringing it up, because this was the first national Confederate flag. The first. We first see it surface in the 1800s. But I digress. They're saying that we are doing all kinds of content about something That's not even true. I went to another website where it originally was to go in and get the message that can't be found. They took it off of a national website where it was indicated where we could see it. So then we found another place where the actual flag laid at rest. It was laid there at rest. Mhm. It was found, and it said exactly what it was. The first Confederate flag. That's the flag that is on the government agency's page. The only page that does not have that on is the White House page, which shows the flag of all 50 states, 50 stars, stripes, you know? But I digress. I just want to bring attention to what we're about to receive. I don't want it. Thank you. Sorry about that. I got churn. Oh God, I hope and pray that my kid's gonna be okay. Let me rephrase that. I'm gonna make it in my power that my kids are okay. We're gonna have to get back to basics, young men and ladies. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just sitting here thinking about it. Now, if that's a call or a signal, you already know. Memos are being sent out probably as we speak that federal employees are to remove all lanyards, pens, etc. that indicate anything that had to do with Pride Month, Black History Month, so on and so forth. They are to gather those things and get rid of them. They are no longer allowed in those agencies. The only thing I can tell you is FAFO, because y'all finding out now. And I said what I said. For stopping by Blended Healing and chopping it up with me. Know what I mean? Just chopping it up. I will be back with another Black History Bite soon. So be well, stay safe. Ashe and deep bow to each and every one of you.
I've been away to be.